What's good, people? So I want to talk to you guys about human experimentation, right? Basically, humans conducting experiments on other human beings. So, oh, by the way, I hope you guys like my new bell. So subscribe or hit the bell, right? But anyway, so this is a really serious topic that a lot of people have no clue about. How it happens, if it happens, when it happens. When you talk about human experimentation, most people think about like World War II and how the Nazis conducted crazy experiments on, I guess, on the Jewish population they held captive, right? And they did horrific things to people, trying to. Every single question they had about humanity, they tested it out. You know, what would happen if we put someone in a vacuum chamber? You know, they wanted to know so that they could send people to space. Every question they wanted, right? So, but most people don't realize that it wasn't just the Nazis that did this. Most of the world conducted experiments on people. Now, since World War II, things have kind of changed, right? We kind of took the value of human life a little more seriously. But, like all laws, there are loopholes. And therefore, countries still, up until this day, conduct human experimentation. And I'm gonna give you, and this is gonna blow your mind because it's a lot more prevalent than you think it is. So, after World War II, human experimentation kind of went underground. They weren't really allowed to. So legally, the way they can do experimentation on human population is if someone is sick. So let's say for the COVID vaccine, right? They needed sick people in order to try out these vaccines. They couldn't take a perfectly healthy human being and conduct experiments on them. They're legally not allowed to do that because the person is healthy. You're not trying to cure anything, right? On the contrary, you'd be hurting that person. So it's illegal to do that. Now, what loopholes are there in order to do human experimentation? Well, one is if the population doesn't know they're being experimented on, right? So government does it secretly. Now, since the 90s, cloning has been a thing. Now, this might remind you people of certain movies and stuff, but there are good reasons why a lot of these films are made. They're not made because they're just interesting. They're made because there's truth behind it. Now, if cloning was a thing, and you can walk into somewhere, give a sample of your blood, and have a pure clone of yourself, right? That clone would not have the same rights as you do because they are not born through natural means. They're essentially test tube babies. That means that they're not sovereign people of the land. They're not citizens of a country. They are duplicates. Being a duplicate, they have no rights. The Constitution doesn't apply to them. So the same way the Constitution doesn't apply, like the U.S. Constitution doesn't apply to Canadians or Mexicans, right? Like the Canadian Constitution applies to Canadian citizens. Their Constitution doesn't apply to us either. So if you have if we do cloning now, well, we can experiment on these people. So if you think our government with all these underground facilities that for fact we have, right? Los Alamos is just like the tip of the iceberg. Like, we have underground bases, we have underground laboratories, underground everything, where all this stuff is really taking place. So cloning is one way of being able to do human experimentation on human beings. Another way is, now, genetically, a chimpanzee or like a silverback gorilla is only like 1%, like its DNA is 1% different than ours, right? And that 1% difference makes it a chimpanzee or a silverback gorilla. I think a 3% difference is like a dolphin. Okay, so that's how much DNA we share. Now, if we were to do DNA experimentation, right? Legally, how much of a chimpanzee's DNA do I have to change to be human? Like, is it 99.8%, 99.9%? What's the percentage that now changes that from being a chimpanzee to a human being? Now, in the reverse, it's how much of human DNA must I change and put in, let's say, spider DNA, let's say chimp DNA, let's say dog DNA, any type of DNA. If I splice 0.001% into a human being of a cockroach's DNA, okay? That person is no longer legally considered to be a human being. They're essentially a hybrid. Even though the deviation from it being an actual, you might look at it and you wouldn't be able to distinguish a difference. You can talk to it, you wouldn't be able to distinguish a difference. You could sleep with it. You could live your entire life with it and not know that they are a splice. So, they can conduct experimentation on these individuals. Now, the reason why all of this is done underground is because if the people find out about it, well, then we'll make laws against it, right? So long as it hasn't been brought out to the mainstream's view, in a sense of like, here is that person and here is that person's suffering, and we as a human race should not condone this. Long as we don't have that person to point to, we can't goalie around them. You know what I'm saying? We can guesstimate and make laws like they tried to make laws for cloning human beings being illegal in the United States. So what about if we set up a lab in Guantanamo Bay? You know, and we send fucking prisoners to we essentially annexed Cuba, right? Nothing can go in, nothing can come out. But yet when we go to war in the Middle East, we have an entire military prison base in Cuba. How does that work? North Korea, do we have bases over there as well? And are we doing human experimentation, all kinds of shit over there too? The world is not as black and white as they tell us. You know what I'm saying? So there's ways around everything. And human experimentation is something they are very, very interested in. Extremely interested in. They have made every type of a human being you can think of. They have spliced so many plants and animals and different materials into people that it would put the Nazis to shame with what they did. We've literally took every single type of plant and spliced it into human DNA and brought it to life to see how it functions, how it thinks, like everything. Every single animal you can think of, every single bug, every single fish, every single lizard. We've experimented with splicing every type of human, like animal and human DNA together. We've done it. You have to understand, like, human experimentation during the Nazis was in World War II. That was like 100 years ago. Imagine what kind of crazy ass experimentation we've been doing ever since then. That it's so crazy that we don't even hear about it. From no country. The craziest thing you'll hear about is like, some country gassed a country, a small population of its people. That's the craziest you'll hear. They bioengineered something and they fucking released it on the public. Well, COVID is one of those, So, I mean, like, if you think we're gonna splice viral genes, don't you think we're gonna splice human genes? So that's my really short version of how human experimentation is going down today. And another one is, once someone dies, once they're dead, they're considered legally dead, and then you bring that person back to life. Well, now the rules kind of change. They're not as black and white as you think they are. Now, you were considered to be dead. Does the law change at all for that? I guarantee you there are places where once you are considered legally dead for a certain amount of time, things the legality changes. Someone on death row once had a heart attack and died, and then was revived, and he sued, and he wanted to be released because he said that he was sentenced to death and he died and he was revived and he was dead for a certain amount of time. So this went all the way up to the Supreme Court, I believe, and they had to change rules around because of this. That's why they give people multiple life sentences and all kinds of crazy shit. But the point I'm getting at is things become murky. It falls in a gray area where if there's a will to manipulate something for government's benefit, you best believe they can figure out ways. So I hope you guys like this one. Subscribe. I hope you guys comment. Hit the bell. I hope you guys like that bell. That thing's awesome. So peace out. Have a good day.